many a times we start off with like parsha stuff or things that are happening for the week, and then segue, if we have time, to Motzei Shabbat, discussion about Motzei Shabbat, which is our main overall theme of the subject of this series of weekly classes. For those that are tuning in, because there's some that are here at the beginning, where this has been going on for almost 3 years, and the arching theme is Shabbat and things related to Shabbat. So we covered aspects related to Friday night, or even before Shabbat, Friday afternoon, Friday night, Shabbos day, Shabbos afternoon, according to Kabbalah and Chassidus, explaining what's going on in the mystical realms, also what is happening down here, how, mirroring what is going on up there, as so much of Kabbalah is, and also with Chassidic insights, what's going on. And so now, like a couple months ago, we started about Motzei Shabbat, about Saturday night. What's the uniquenesses? What's happening Kabbalistically and in other spiritual, and also practically. And with it, so Motzei Shabbat is, we have different aspects. We have the Havdalah, right? Motzei Shabbat. We also have Malav Malka, which is the special meal. Some call it the fourth meal. After the third meal, Shal Shuddis, right? And we spoke somewhat of the significance of it, though there's a lot more to discuss, right? And then there's also the prayer aspect, the davening. We've been jumping around like different, discussing things related to Havdalah. What is the significance of the besamim, the incense? What's the significance of the candles? For Burma Ha'esh that we make, and the meal too, how we manifest all the spiritual aspects of Shabbat and draw it into the weekdays, which is what is happening Saturday night, through the specific rituals and even food, a meal. Though what we did not discuss yet is the prayer aspect of it. Just like on Shabbat in general, as we've been discussing, there are the two main components that work on connecting us with both our souls with the spiritual upper dimensions and realms, to connect with the divine presence and unique, special revelation of Shabbat and what have you. So it's two parts. There is the prayer, the davening, that is to connect our spiritual aspect, let's call it our soul component within us. Then we have the special sudot, the meals of Shabbat. That is to embody it into our physical selves, into our guf, into our bodies. So, and same too, let's say Shabbat, as mentioned, there's the Malav Malkat for the actual food part to embody, but there is also the prayers. Now, unlike Shabbat, where we know we have very special long prayers, Kabbalah Shabbat Friday night, there is long Shachrit and Musaf, and even Mincha, you have the special Shemona Esrei. Motzei Shabbat, we go back to davening, regular davening, right? The Mariv. However, we do insert specific additions. One is Havdalah in the fourth blessing of the Shemona Esrei, in Atochonen Ladandat, we say Atochonen Tanu. We already make Havdalah then. We technically are involved with Havdalah Saturday night 3 times, both in the Shemona Esrei, number one. Number 2 is the Havdalah that's made in synagogue with community. And number 3 is Havdalah we make at home for our families. Okay? Because we have 3 main layers to our souls. We have it also in Friday night. We also say Vayechulu Hashemayim Haaretz. Also, there's also 3 times you say it in, I think in Shemona Esrei, right? And then you say it after Shemona Esrei, and then you say it during Kiddush. So this triplet way is to really draw down these prayers into all, the 3 main components of our souls: Nefesh, Ruach, and Neshama. Okay. So as we'll now, so there is the Havdalah of addition of prayer. We do Motzei Shabbat, but the most important prayer, according to the Kabbalah, according to the Arizal, is right after Shemona Esrei, when we say V'hi Noam Hashem Elokeinu Aleinu, U'Masi Yadeinu Konan Aleinu, Masi Yadeinu Konanei. Right? It's the last verse of Psalms chapter 90. Hope so, and in fact, we were going through the Lurianic Kabbalah writings of Chaim Vital of the Arizal related to Motzei Shabbat, and we read some a couple weeks ago, right, where he discusses the aspects of the fire, how to hold, to position our fingers to the fire and things like that. We looked also at some Zohar on it. Now the Arizal, in that special composition called Eitz Chaim, which is the most important collection of the Arizal's teachings, he continues there all about the significance of the prayer V'hi Noam that we say. Okay, so what we'll do this week is we will reverse the order. We will begin with the Motzei Shabbat discussion, particularly going through the Arizal, how he describes the prayer V'hi Noam and what it means on Kabbalistic levels and for ourselves personally in our souls. It is also Rosh Chodesh Kislev tonight, and so actually it's 2 days Rosh Chodesh this year. So tonight is the last day of Cheshvan, and then tomorrow night begins the month of Kislev. And what we usually do here also is, like around Rosh Chodesh time, we discuss the new month, what it means Kabbalistically, other ways, both drawing, and particularly using the way it's described in the Sefer Yetzirah, one of the oldest texts of Kabbalah, and also the way the Bnei Yisachar, the Dinovei Rebbe, the progenitor of the Munkach dynasty, who elaborates on the Sefer Yetzirah for every month. So we'll draw from there and also from other sources, and and in fact, we will show, and then from there we will go and discuss the Parsha. And in fact, we will show that there is a link. Again, we do this also many a times, showing that what we're learning or discussing about Motzei Shabbat is connected to the time of the year where we are now, and with the Parsha of the week. Okay, so now, without further ado, we're going to go to the Arizal text, or more accurately, the Chaim Vital text of Arizal teachings from the Eitz Chaim, from the Shar Kavanot, which we were studying a couple weeks ago. I'm going to share the screen, and please let me know if there are any if there's any bandwidth issues. Okay, here we go. Okay, I hope so far it's good. So here we go in the text. Now, what I like about this specific layout that we have on the screen is this is, I think, a wiki text of Shar Kavanot, and what they've done is they've broken it up into like sentences and paragraphs in a more readable way. If you open up the classic Eitz Chaim and Shar Kavanot, all of this, like where it says Inyan V'hi Noam all the way down, would be all compacted as one paragraph, or one, right? Yes. But here you see it's broken down in a way that's way more easier to read and for us. So I'm very grateful for that. So what we'll just do is we're gonna just read through and with some extra explication, and hopefully and as we'll see, this isn't just about V'hi Noam, but it's actually explaining this whole concept of that we've discussed in the past of Tosefet Shabbos, Tosefet Shabbos, surplus Shabbos, addition of Shabbos. That in fact, according to the Talmud Gemara, this is a mitzvah to add to Shabbos itself, both before Shabbos and after, at least a few minutes. Our custom is 18 minutes before Shabbos. After Shabbos, there's different opinions too. We say that Shabbos ends when the 3 stars you can see in the what's known as Tzot Kochavim, which is true, but really we should wait at least a couple or few more minutes thereafter. Some actually have a thing to spend, to extend it to even more, like up to an hour after the 3 stars come out, right? And this is all under that concept of adding to the holiness of Shabbos. So there's 2 parts. One is we're extending Shabbat into what is technically already the weekday time, but it's still, we still did not accept the weekday itself, okay? So that's like before Havdalah even. We're just adding to Shabbos. That's one way. The other way of Kedushat Shabbat is that, Tosfot Shabbat is that even after we make Havdalah, even after it's already for us weekday, we still are able to draw from the holiness of Shabbat into the post-Shabbat period and Saturday night, and then on into the rest of the week, as we'll see. Okay? And now we're going to read from the Arizal, from the Arizal's teachings on what we just said. Before we do that, just to show you in the text in Tehilim, if you see on your screen too. So it's Tehilim, Psalms chapter 90. That's the famous one that starts Chilu Moshish Tashiv Enesh Adaka. And then Shuva Hashem Ad Matai, return Hashem to when? V'nacham al B'dacha, have comfort, give comfort, consolation to your servant, blah, blah, blah. So, you satisfied in the morning, and we rejoice, make us happy, and bring your glory upon your children. And then comes the last verse, may the pleasantness or preciousness, graciousness, is the translation here, of Hashem, our Lord, upon us, and the workings of our hands will be fashioned or established upon us. So these 2 levels is way up there. Then it comes down like lingering above us, but didn't fully penetrate us. And then comes the 3rd part, when it comes really the workings of our hands established within us. Incidentally, the 2nd song that we sang earlier, Shuva Hashem Ad Masei. So that nigun was actually composed for the Lubavitcher Rebbe's 89th birthday, because then you say the 90th chapter of Tehilim. And this is a song we sang for the Rebbe until he had his stroke towards the end of his 89th year. So this is this song we sang with the Rebbe at his gatherings, Fabrengens and such. So it's a meaningful song for those who remember that, of course. So now let's get back to the Shar Kavanot itself. Now we're going to see, first we're going to have an introduction of what is this whole concept of adding Shabbos for ourselves into the weekday time. And then specifically how it's broken down in this verse, V'hi Noam. Okay? So here we go. Inyan V'hi Noam de Motzei Shabbos. The upper right-hand corner. Inyan V'hi Noam, the idea of the concept of saying V'hi Noam, Shenoigin Leimah B'chol Motzei Shabbos, which the custom is to say every Motzei Shabbat, right after Shemoneh Esrei of Mariv. So now he's going to explain it. He says, I'm going to explain it. And by understanding what is V'hi Noam, will also explain the general concept of how to draw and extend this addition, surplus of the holiness of Shabbos into all the 6 days of the week until the next Shabbat. So now he begins. Hine, Mizmar Zesh of V'hi Noam, this psalm of V'hi Noam, we want us to say it, this whole verse, because actually after V'hi Noam, that is the first verse you say, but then it continues we continue saying the next chapter, chapter 91, which is Yoshev B'Seiter Elyon, right? Let me see. Yeah. And then we say the whole chapter 91. Interesting. But here, the Arizal is not going into the next chapter yet, 91. He's just going to explain the significance of this last chapter, last verse of chapter 90. Okay. So he's saying that you have to say it all standing, meaning he's saying both, because we begin with that last verse of chapter 90, and also all of 91 should also be said all standing. At least, if one cannot stand for all of it, say at least this verse, V'hi Noam, standing, and then when it comes to Psalm 91, you could sit down. But preferably stand for all of it. Why? What's so important, and why keep standing? The reason. Because if you remember, we spoke about in the past in different contexts that there's two main channels. There's two main channels that of light that happen. There's the Or Yashar, that's the regular light, that's generally what we think of like coming down from above. But then there's the reflective or rebound light. That's the Or Chozer, the returning light that comes after the light comes down, or even not. Then there's the light that goes up, right? So in our context of Shabbos, there is light coming. The Shabbos light that we receive, the light of Shabbos, is all mainly Or Yashar coming down. And then it is during the weekdays that once we capture, so to speak, the energy of this Shabbat light, and then we could reflect it back up, and with that in the process also elevate ourselves. So the Or Chozer in this context is associated mainly with what's happening with Tosfot Shabbat, what's happening at the end or after Shabbat, post Shabbat light. Okay. Now remember, it's the same light, but it's just being reflected back. So similarly, what he's saying here is that the surplus of Shabbat and light, so to speak, energy that we take in, we absorb by Motzei Shabbat. Now it's our time to give it back, to release it, to let it go back up. Okay. Incidentally, this idea of the two thrusts of light, what we say yashar, directly, or more specifically milmaila lamata, going from above down light, and then the Or Chozer, return light, which is milmata, from down here, lamaila, going up. This is reflected in the other aspects of that we're hopefully going to get to discuss tonight. Both the light that's associated with this coming new month of Kislev, and the light associated with Avraham and Yitzchak, respectively, and also Yaakov and Esav, respectively. Okay. So therefore, there is, overlaying this idea connects with all the things hopefully we'll discuss tonight. So now what he's saying here specifically is that this great light that comes down to us originally from Shabbat is channeling through the sphere of Bina, right? Because Bina is the first of all the Sephirot. It's this first Sephirah that begins expansion and full illumination. And that is the light that filters through the lower Sephirot to get to us. So there's a way that it filters through, and then it's like we could say, wouldn't say downgrades, but becomes more focused and more aligned in a way that we could absorb it. There is also the light of Bina that it comes more direct, shines more intensely without going through full filtration. Okay. Whichever way that this is, this light of Bina, this is what is called Noam Hashem, right? We say Lachzot b'Noam Hashem, like we say in Achat Sha'alti, in the verse we say for Elul and Tishrei, Lachzot, to see b'Noam Hashem, the graciousness of Hashem, ulevaker beichalei, and to visit in his chamber, in God's chamber, because it's also, Bina is known about expansion, like a chamber. So in general, when we say Noam or Noam Hashem, it is signifying the sphere of Bina. In this context, it's the Bina light of Shabbos coming down to us. So what's happening is the Bina comes down to us. That's the Noam, the V'hi Noam Hashem Elokeinu Aleinu. But then once we comes down here, then the surplus of Shabbos is that we magnify this through reflecting it. That's the Or Chozer part. So when it comes to Motzei Shabbat, we're taking the Noam light of Shabbos and making it bigger, drawing it back up, rebounding it, rising it back up. So therefore, therefore we are saying the Noam here, this verse standing up, because we're showing also that we are Chozer, we're taking the light we took and we're standing up, bringing it, raising this light of Bina of Noam Hashem, and in a way that is fully expansive. Also, just think of it, the difference of light coming from up down or down up means up down means it's like overwhelming great light. It's almost transcendental light, let's call it, and therefore it comes down to us. Yet when it comes to us, either we could absorb it if we're worthy, if we're refined enough, or not, and then it becomes more overwhelming, right? And then so it's all about that which is on the outside or above us that is imposing in the positive way upon us. But it's not necessarily that it made full transformation from within us, right? So the uniqueness of the rebound light, the Or Chozer, from bottom going up, is it's saying that we're tapping into within us that the way we are down here, even down here, where there are even elements of darkness, that itself transforms and can be elevated and bring out the light from even on our level down here. Okay, even in our, let's call it mundane weekday state of existence. Okay, so now he's going to explain specifically, going into both what are the mechanisms of taking the Shabbos light or energy and drawing it through, extending it throughout the weekdays. And then we'll go specifically into understanding the meaning of the verse, okay? And this is his explanation. No. It's not just, we just get this gift of light of surplus Shabbos from above. No, we have to work upon it to make ourselves worthy containers to receive it and to be able to elevate it, reflect it. We know in Leviticus, Vayikra, and in Parashat Kedoshim, it says, God says, you shall be holy, you shall make yourselves holy. Then V'hi Kedoshim, and then you will be holy. So the question is, why this redundancy? Why two times? So here we'll see in the context that the first part, V'hi is, let's say in the Shabbos context, means that is the Shabbos light that God shines down upon us, the holiness. And then we absorb it, we capture it, we receive it. And then comes the second part, V'hi Kedoshim. Then we have to work with this to keep this holiness going on our terms, on our weekday level. Okay. And this is a great thing. That a person to sanctify himself in the weekdays from the holiness of Shabbos that preceded the weekdays. And this is hachanase, and this is the way of doing this prep of the person of utilizing the Shabbos light and holiness throughout the week. No. That every Shabbos, there is a holiness is increased in the person's three levels of his soul, his nefesh, his ruach, and his neshama. As we spoke in the past, that there are 5 main layers to the soul. In hierarchical lowest is nefesh, above that ruach, above that neshama. That is the main part of the souls that are within us. Then there are 2 higher levels, which are more aura, more transcendent, that are not fully absorbed in our bodies. And that is chaya, and above that yechida. Okay, let's continue. Now, there are different types of people, categories. there are those that are more tapped into their lower soul level, or we could talk about chakras if that makes more sense, but whatever, we don't even need to. That if in the gradations of the soul, there are those that are more nefesh related. Nefesh is more the most prime, like most, the one that's most manifested into our physical experience or behavioral or activity experience, right? Chulu, continuation, meaning that there are those that are more tapped into their ruach level, which is more the emotional, more spiritual. Then there's higher than that. Those that are tapped into the highest, just neshama level, which is pure soul energy. Like the tzaddikim are mainly always in the neshama level, okay? But most of us are most probably on the nefesh level, and maybe if we're lucky on the ruach level, okay? Whatever level we are working on, is our natural soul state. There are those that can tap in up to all three levels, not just one or even two, but all three. So now we're gonna just to give what an additional insight that we're going to get to now is that there's the human and we have our soul, right? Body, soul and body. So therefore the soul has different levels. Also, that's on the micro level. On the macro level, there are the worlds, the dimensions, the ilamis, and more specifically, there are 4 levels, right? Also in lower to upper levels, there's Asiyah, above that Yitzira, above that Bria, and then there's the higher, most spiritual realm is Atzilut, right? So you see that there is, on the macro, is mirroring the micro, that there's just like there's Nefesh, Ruch, Neshama in our soul, so too in the worlds, there's Asiyah, Yitzira, Bria, okay? Now, as I think we discussed this in the past when we were learning about about how our entrance into Shabbos, how do we begin Shabbos, we spoke about the idea of aliyat and about ascending, elevation, that there's 2 parts. There's elevating our souls from one, that those that are mainly on the base nefesh level, Shabbat elevate to at least 1 step higher to the ruach base level of soul, and yada, yada, yada. So too in the worlds, that there's also elevations happening. That which is normally on, let's say, Asiyah elevates Yitzira. That which is a Yitzira. For example, we said that there's 2 main angels. There's Metatron and there's Sandalphon. So as if I recall, we were learning that Sandalphon, which is like the junior, to like Batman and Robin, Lahavdil. So Sandalphon is like the assistant of Metatron. So Sandalphon is usually in the Asiyah level. Shabbat goes up to Yitzira. And Metatron, who's usually in Yitzira, goes up to Bria. Okay, levels. I hope everyone understands when we speak about these worlds. Let me just see if I have the graph very quickly. All right. Oh, here it is. All right. So if you see on this screen, for those who haven't seen this before, I even wrote it here on the left, on the right side. You see Sandalphon's going up to Asiyah to Yitzira, and then Metatron's going up here. So Asiyah elevates Yitzira, Yitzira to Bria, and so on and so forth. Okay. So there's 2 things happening. There's the micro elevations and there's the macro elevations. So now he's going to plug it in. So just like there are different realms in our personal souls, there's also in the worlds. So now he continues. There are those, on very high spiritual levels that could absorb take in the surplus holiness of Shabbos, the taste of Shabbos that we take into the weekday, even on that highest soul level of neshama. Then there are those that maybe are not even attuned, tapped into their own souls, and they can't even elevate from their souls. But you know what? Things around in the dimensions and the worlds are happening anyways. All you have to do is be in whatever world, and you'll naturally go up with that world. So even if we on the micro level have not been working on ourselves and refining to elevate, but at least everything is elevating, right? Imagine you're in an elevator. So the elevator is going up, and then you jump up while the elevator is going up, right? So if you jump up, now let's say the elevator is stationary on the floor. So you jump up, of course, you're getting higher. But then let's say the elevator starts going up, so now you're getting higher. Anyways, right? Because your whole environment is getting higher. But did you really, really, really raise Lavdafka? So the ideal is both. Both the elevators going up and you're able to jump and levitate, let's even call it, while the elevator is going up, okay? So he's saying, but it could be just the elevators going up for you, that, just the worlds are going up, or be messy. There are those that just only have illuminated mainly the lowest level of their soul. But then when it comes to Tosfot Shabbos, the surplus Shabbos that they take in, it's only on that lowest level of nefesh. But what about the higher levels of his soul, the ruach neshama? He is not necessarily elevating it from within him, but it is happening on some level because all the worlds are elevating anyways. Like that, again, the metaphor of the elevator rising. Anyways. So too, you could understand all the different other combinations of how it could be. The nefesh going up, the soul, or just ruach or neshama, all three, and on and so forth. Then there are those that, like for example, that just have nefesh ruach, but their neshama is not fully illuminated. And there are those that don't have any aspects of able to relate or tap into their souls to elevate, but at least they're hanging on to the worlds that are going up or receiving the surplus of Shabbos. But even then, they're not necessarily tapping into the essence of the holiness of Shabbos. They're getting it indirectly by second or third power away from the actual essence, source of the holiness of Shabbos. Therefore, those that are, let's say, on the lower soul realms, they can mainly only elevate that which they're able they're fully manifest of the surplus of the soul, that it tailored to their specific soul print of that time. Okay, therefore the person needs to focus, concentrate, have kavana, that there should still remain, there should be that extension of the surplus of Shabbos from that Shabbos going out into the weekdays after Shabbos. And through his focus, concentration, and working on extending the holiness of Shabbos into the weekdays, he will be able to fortify, establish, make clear, establish his pathways that he needs for the subsequent 6 days of the week. If he has the right continuous kavanah of keeping this extension of Shabbos holiness going. And if he keeps this kavanah properly, so then he's assured that his evil inclination will not get the better of him throughout the weekdays. He will not even make him sin for that week until the next Shabbos. It's all dependent on the intensity of the individual's kavanah with holiness and purity in this area. Just to recap very quickly, we're about to delve into the Arizal explication on the main, what he sees as the main important prayer of Motzei Shabbat, which is the verse V'hi Noam that we say after Shemona Esrei of Shabbat. So before he goes into the details, the Arizal here is first giving us the groundwork and general explanation of how the mechanism of how we're able to draw the holiness of Shabbos into the weekdays. The taste of Shabbos, that surplus of Shabbos, is both on the soul level, whatever level we are on, if nefesh or higher ruach or higher neshama, whatever we are, and also that on a macro level, that all the worlds are also are being affected or being spirit, elevated on some level by receiving this Tosfot Shabbos. Okay, does that make sense to you? And one more thing, that it's also dependent on our kavanah that we have to elevate. Let us continue. So now he continues about how do we draw and manifest this holiness of Shabbos, not just for Motzei Shabbat, but for all the days of the week. The way of Hashra'ah is a term of rate of dwelling, indwelling, you can even call it. Like drawing down the surplus of holiness, right? Is like we say the Shechina is Shoreh also, right? Even the word for Sarah means Frara, which means dominion, to settle, to draw down, to lay upon. That which is hovering on us or even coming down upon us. So how do we bring this whole surplus of Shabbos into the weekdays? Is in the following way. Sunday of the week, right after what Shabbos, then certainly the highest level of our souls, the highest level being of the soul that's within us, neshama, as we said before, neshama is above ruach, which is above nefesh. So the holiness of neshama part, the holiness of neshama, it lingers, still remains with us for Sunday. Okay? Then comes Sunday night when Monday begins, second day. Then that highest level of neshama starts disappearing, dissolving, departing. So now he continues. It says in Masechta Tainis, I think in the beginning, he goes through the different days of the week when in the Holy Temple, when they did fast or did not fast. So Sunday, the halacha is that the Kohanes, the high priests, there were different mishmarot, different how would you call it? Scheduling periods of
watches, different shifts.
Shifts, very good, thank you. Right, shifts of guarding, protecting the Beit HaMikdash, the Holy Temple. So the Gemara says that Amshi Mishmar Lahim Misan V'Yanachad, that the Mishmar people, the Kohanim, would not fast on Sunday in the temple. Why? Not to go from the sheer delight and pleasure, spiritual and physical, that they were experiencing on Shabbat, and go straight to fasting. That could actually, such an extreme shift, he says, can even maybe lead to someone passing on. So therefore, we want to segue the person in a healthy way from that high intensity Shabbos holiness into the weekday. So we still keep Sunday keep the holiness rolling then a bit. And therefore, it's ideal not to fast on Sunday. Unless, if I recall, it's a nitcha fast, or it comes out that time of the year. Let's say Tisha B'Av, let's say Shabbat. Jonathan asked a couple of weeks ago if it's not ideal to fast, let's say Shabbat, why do we, let's say Tisha B'Av, begin that night? And I forgot to look up if anyone openly discusses it, but just intuitively shared that usually, yes, generally you're not supposed to fast, but then when you have a formal, big, major fast that is of great importance, then you could say that usurps in a way, even if there's a Shabbos way. And in fact, you're able to bring out a holiness. By the way, incidentally, just know there are conditions where you're allowed to fast even on Shabbat. It says if someone, let's say a Talmid Chacham, in general, if someone has pleasure, delight to fast, there's such people that actually love fasting. So for them, one can say that. So in Shabbat, there's actually technically times you can fast. If you have real delight to fast. So there are those who say you could do. Mike, for example, there's the idea of Tainit Chalom. If you have a nightmare, then there's a tradition at times to people fast because of that the next day. There's also a way of how to absolve the fast by Hataras Tainit Chalam, which is its own Indian. The point being that they say that if someone is, let's say a righteous, a Talmid Chacham, someone is, for him, it's more important to fast, not just to absolve the fast, for sure. So in that case, actually, if he wouldn't fast, then he would be in great he would be greatly disturbed and be uncomfortable, even pained emotionally. So for him, he would be able to fast even on Shabbat. Okay, and so we see that it's the idea of Shabbos. More important than just the eating the meals, even more important is to have the oneg Shabbat, the delight of Shabbat, whatever it may be. Sometimes not eating. Maybe I'm just thinking now. Maybe that's why there's some that have a custom, especially in Chabad, to eat minimally at least for Shal Shuddis. And we said once the past, because it says during the man 3 times the word Hayom today, and related to eating the man. But the 3rd time it says Hayom. It says lo tasim malachim, not to do work. And the lo, the negative part of it is transposed upon also food. That for the 3rd meal you eat less at least. Okay, so we see at least there's an expression of that. Moreover, it says in Shulchan Aruch, in fact, that if you really ate a lot for the 2nd meal, day meal, and let's say especially these days of the week, a year that early days, night begins early, right? So you could still you feel really full from the Shabbos meal, and then you have to go eat a 3rd meal. So there, halacha says that in such a case, if you're not supposed to, you don't have to gorge yourself and just stuff yourself. And you could just take taste of some food, some fruit or a mezonot, and so that suffices. Again, because the primary emphasis of Shabbat is not to eat as much as it is to eat even matamim, great delicacies that you don't eat throughout the week. And hopefully we'll get to discuss matamim also, because it has to do with our parsha, with Yitzchak eating, the offering, that which Yaakov and brought to Yitzchak to eat was called matamim also. We'll get to there maybe, hopefully. But there is a thing, but even greater, as we mentioned, is just to be in a state of bliss and delight. And therefore don't overeat. Okay? So let's continue here. So therefore we don't fast. Traditionally we don't fast on Sunday. Because on Sunday we're supposed to still continue extending that is still resonant in us, the highest soul level of neshama, to extend that soul holiness and tranquility and delight of Shabbos into Sunday. So that's the rest. So then comes Sunday night, starts Monday. The neshama starts dissipating. And then what still remains? The Taisus, next line, the Taisus haruach nishar yem beis b'Shabbos. Then we work Monday. We have the ruach level of our soul still with us, and we're working that through to integrate and work its energy into the weekdays, into Monday, and then that departs Monday night. Then the next day, the Taisus hanefesh nisharet ad yem gimel b'Shabbos. Then the lowest soul level, nefesh, stays with us for Tuesday. Then it departs. Okay. So now in the brackets he's going to explain something which will also explain a certain amshir never minik. And with this we'll able to understand why the Chazal say, the holy rabbis say, if you did not make Havdalah Saturday night, you could actually b'diavad. That means if you need to, and you could extend and make Havdalah until Tuesday sometime. Our tradition is till Tuesday afternoon. But Tamhu, the reason is ki ad nishat chines Taisus Shabbos havin, because at least until through Tuesday, there's still some part of the soul levels of Shabbos still with us, lingering. Okay, so this again explains also why in Amshinov, where the Rebbe could daven Shabbos after Shabbos quite late, and I think there were cases that he too didn't fully leave Shabbos and make Havdalah until Tuesday, sometime Tuesday. Okay, so that is until Tuesday night. Then what happens Wednesday? Then actually Wednesday begins the foreshadowing for the next week coming. From Wednesday and on, you have to make the kavanah and focus in a different way of how the Shabbos is affecting our souls. And that is to begin prepping our souls on the levels to be ready take in, in the appropriate level to take in the Shabbos energy of the coming week. So Wednesday we work on the lower level. We start working our way up on the nefesh, and that goes through Wednesday into Wednesday night, and then then starting Wednesday night, meaning like starting tonight, which is technically in Judaism, the day follows the night. So the day of Thursday begins at night, Wednesday night, like now. So Thursday, then have the kavanah to prepare our ruach level of our soul for the upcoming week, Shabbos. Will be involved, and then starting Thursday night, tomorrow night into Friday, to be prepared to receive surplus of the soul of the next of this upcoming, the highest level of the soul, neshama. Gam. For this reason, so too, as the Gemara says, the guardians in the Beit HaMikdash Kohanim that were on duty shift for Friday didn't fast them either, in order that they would be fully like preparing themselves to receive that highest level of soul energy for preparing it for the upcoming Shabbos. Hari Nimsa. So we see from this, the important days of the week related to Shabbos is Hudalet V'Zayin, is Wednesday and the seventh day, the seventh day, of course, is Shabbos. But Wednesday too. Why? The first 3 days, Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, is still extending, drawing, is still living off the Shabbos before. And the next 3 days, the last days, that means Thursday, Friday, Shabbos is related to the next Shabbos. Nimsa Sheyayim HaShabbos Hudal, that there's some unique day in between, which is Wednesday. Is associated in its own way of being a certain pinnacle for Shabbos. In fact, the Zohar discusses this. I remember a long time ago, I think we even read the Zohar, that when we say even that there is, that we say there's the Shabbos, we said it, we learned it when we learned in a different way, right? We said that there's Yemina uve Smala, we say in the Friday night Rizal song, Yemina uve Smala beinayu chala. There's to the right and to the left, and between them is the bride, meaning Shabbos. So you could say there are the angels on the right, the angels on the left, and the Shabbos spirit queen is in between. That's one way to learn it. The other way is to learn right means the 3 days. That means in this case, maybe it's Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. Then there's Shabbos, and to the left is Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, the next. Okay, that's it. But the Rizal says, if I recall, the Zohar says something else deeper. That actually there's a way that Wednesday is in the middle, and then you have the Sunday, Monday, Tuesday to the right of Wednesday, and then to the left of Wednesday is Thursday, Friday, and Shabbos. Okay? It's basically the odd day. Odd and even, it's the odd. It's the numbers of, so the fourth day and the seventh day, the different ways to look at it, as seeing as that they are in the center and seen as the Shabbat day. Incidentally, that is why two things. First of all, based on what we're learning here, now we understand why when we say things, and it's also based, I think, also Gemara, there was an Amora, or a rabbi, that every day of the week, they would say, not just Sunday, but say the first day of the week of Shabbat, towards Shabbat. Right? Yom Aleph b'Shabbos, Yom Beis b'Shabbos. And in fact, in our Shir Shoyom, when we say the Shir Shoyom at the end of davening, Shachas every day, that's what we do. Yom Rishon b'Shabbos, Yom Sheni b'Shabbos, Yom Shish b'Shabbos, and so on. So when it comes to V'hi, Wednesday, not only do we say the special parak, the verse of chapter of Psalms for that, but we end off with L'chu Neranan. We already say the verses related to Kabbalat Shabbat on Wednesday. Why? Because as we see what we're learning here, that there's that the Wednesday in a way is a centered beginning of Shabbos. You could say Shabbos on the seventh day of the week is the fulfillment or the actual revelation, manifestation of that which begins on Wednesday on a more concealed and level of potential. Okay, so therefore Wednesday, and that's why we also have our classes over here Wednesday night, because this is the time of build-up of that. Wednesday is the day we start tapping into the next week's Shabbat, the upcoming Shabbos, and then we work through Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday, and out until to get us prepared for Shabbos. All right, but Tamhu and where are we here? Okay, yeah. Wait, I'm sorry. Yeah, okay. I'm sorry. Nimsa Sheyem Shabbos Udalit, right? That Shabbos. Then in a certain way, that the other unique day that's related to Shabbos throughout the week is Wednesday. That if you have these proper connections of how our nefesh for Wednesday, ruach for Thursday, neshama for Friday, preparing them, then we will merit to have the appropriate surplus of Shabbos energy for the upcoming week. So we see that we explain. So now we see that having the kavanah of receiving the Tosfot, the surplus of Shabbos, is not just relegated to Friday afternoon or Motzei Shabbat, which is the technical times when we add time to Shabbos, but it's for all the 6 days of the weekdays. Because any of the 6 days of the week, it's either associated with drawing from the energy from the week before that passed, or to prepare for the upcoming Shabbos. Let me just see something here. Oops, sorry. Holy Harry. And this is also how, as we just explained, how it's particularly, how highlights what the specific parts of our soul, the nefesh, ruach, and neshama. What technically is supposed to do during the weekdays, you'll explain somewhere else. I don't think we're going to go into it now, certainly not. But now, now we're going to go get into the meat of what we're talking about, how this is associated with V'hi Noam. And now we're going to explain the kavanah related to specifically the V'hi Noam from Motzei Shabbos, which is the source and root for all the kavanot for all the 6 days of the week related to our soul levels. But even before that, he has to make another introduction, and now he's going to explain, like I shared orally earlier, the two components of that relate to Shabbos and elevating, meaning the elevation of our souls, which is through prayer. But then there's also the elevation that comes through there's elevations, through prayer. But then there's also the elevation through the meals that we eat. Okay, no. And there's two aspects of Tosfos surplus of Shabbos that is increased through Shabbos. One is through the kavanah of prayer, davening itself. The other is through the kavanah that we apply during our meals, the sudot of Shabbos. So in order to now just to highlight, to emphasize and to magnify, to draw that place of Shabbos for the weekdays on the meal level, that is what the fourth meal of Shabbos, of Motzei Shabbat, which we call Malav Malka, that is what Malav Malka is accomplishing. For us to tap into the way it is in our physical way, and the way we set up for our Malav Malka will also set up the way we relate to food and eating and bodily energy throughout the oncoming days in the next week. The kavanah sahi, what is the kavanah of through Malav Malka and the meal? The most general kavanah is to draw down the light of the holiness of the meals of Shabbos for all the meals of the week. So that is on the meal physical food level. And corresponding to the drawing down the holiness of surplus of Shabbos on the prayer level, and to extend that into our davening throughout the weekdays. And as it's brought down in Chassidus, whenever we daven throughout the weekdays, even on a Tuesday or Wednesday, we daven, let's say Shacharis, that time while we're davening, it's like we're tapping into mini Shabbos. Like we're taking already from Shabbos energy, and it's like, so we have these mini illuminations of Shabbos even throughout the week through our davenings, right? So how do we tap into this Shabbos energy throughout the weekdays in our davening? So just like we said, on the food level is malka, on the prayer level is that is what V'hi Noam. That comes through the saying the prayer, the Tehilim of V'hi Noam that we say after Shemona Shabbos. With that, we're able to extend that supernal graciousness, right, or pleasantness, which, as we explained before, is the level of bina of Shabbat. Then we're able to bring it throughout the weekdays when we pray throughout the week. Now let's continue. Amar Chaim HaKaisi, says Chaim, the writer. This is like an addition that Reb Chaim Vital himself put in to what he was already transcribing, what he received from the Arizal. But now Reb Chaim Vital, who's the main disciple of Arizal, is adding his own insight. To me, according to my humble opinion, it seems to me is that the food we eat, and let's say Shabbos, when we're eating the meals, that is tapping into, and we're elevating the outer realms of the world's dimensions. Okay, that's elevating, in addition to our body and soul being elevated. But on the macro, on the environmental element, it's elevating, but just more the external parts of the world, which is inferior to the inner part of the world. So, right, because it's more physical stuff, eating food. Not tefillos, but prayers, where we're davening, tapping directly into our soul. Not only is it elevating our soul, but it's also tapping in and elevating the innermost realms of the world. That means in the world of Yetzirah, that's when we eat. So then it's tapping into the outer realms of Yetzirah. And when we daven, it's tapping into the pnimius of Yetzirah. And if you recall, we spoke about it in the past, more of the mechanism, different opinions, how it works, that the inner realm of the lower world elevates and becomes the outer realm of the higher world, right? So like the pnimiut of Yetzirah, let's bring the graph up again, let's say the Yetzirah here, the inner part of Yetzirah elevates up to Bria and then becomes the outer realm of Bria, all right? And so on and so forth. Incidentally, when we speak about the outer realm of something, sometimes it is explained as being inferior, as we're learning here. Other times, there's a level of the external, the outer realm of a world that actually is saying it's so superior, it's so great, that it's too big to go into the inner parts of that world. And in that way, the outer part of that world is maybe superior. And that is known in Kabbalah as the makif, the surrounding. It's almost like an aura. The aura is so great, they cannot come in. Like on the soul level, we say Chai and Yechida, which are the highest levels and the most essence levels of the soul, that they're so lofty and great that they're beyond body. So they translate or actually they don't come within our bodies, but they surround our bodies like an aura. And then, so the Chaya is the closer aura to our body, and then the aura of the aura is the Yechida, which is ironically the highest point. So in that way, it's that which is higher is actually what is most outer. But when you're looking at it from the perspective of what is more manifested in the body, you would say that which is inner is closer and deeper, and therefore more superior. Okay. V'zev kavanase. Now he's going to go how this plays out in the worlds. Before we saw how it works in Nefesh Ruach Neshama. Now there's going to be, here on, there's going to be more technical Kabbalistic terms. We're not going to go into explaining all the details of it. Masi Yadenu means the workings of our hands. That's very literal. Masi Yadenu, meaning that which we do with our hands. the workings of our hands. Masi Yadenu, our handiwork. Very good. That the word handiwork has both the work masa and hand. Yadenu. Very good. Okay, so let's see how things play out in the dimensions, in the worlds. So he says, beginning have kavana of the four worlds in their hierarchical level from top bottom, Atzilut, below that Bria, below that Yitzir, below that Asir. He says that the world, that Atzilut, which is the highest, is most pnimiut, that means most inner because it's most lofty, represented by the name Eke, Aleph Hey Yud Hey, or Ehya, even you're allowed to say it openly. As we know in other places, the Ehya is most corresponds to Keter, Kester, the highest sphere, even above all sphere, which is most associated with Atzilus, okay? So there's the Pnimius of Atzilus and there's the Achorayim of Atzilus. There's the outer part. Achorayim means the back, right? Meaning the more external part of Atzilus, and that is another different combination of the name Eya. Okay. Then below that you have the Pnimius of the world of Bria, the inner part of Bria, which is synonymous with the outer part of Atzilut, as we were explaining before. And then from that, there's the outer part of Bria, which is a name, Yud Kei Vav Kei of Sag. That means of the combination, as we spoke about many times, that there's four main combinations. The Yud Kei Vav Kei name, there's Ma, 45, Ban, 52, Sag, 63, Av, 72. I don't think I need to repeat it now, unless anyone specifically doesn't remember and wants a refreshing of it. Is basically the idea is how do you spell out? Like, let's just take the letter Yud. So Yud in Gematria is 10. But if you spell out Yud, I just said the word Yud. So it's, even though it's a letter, but it's said as a word. So Yud is Yud Vav Dalet. Yud Vav Dalet is actually Gematria 20. So you see the very same letter Yud, and it's just as a letter is 10, but if it's expanded as a word, it's 20. So same too, there are four main ways, even though there's multiple other ways to do it, but in the Kabbalah, we speak about four main ways to spell out the four letters of Yud Kei Vav Kei as each letter being a word. Again, away Gematria 45, of that 52, above that 63, above 72. So the outer part of Bria is associated with the name Yud Kei Vav Kei of the level of 63. Okay. Then below that, there's the inner level dimension of Yetzirah world, which is the outer part of the name Yud Kei Vav Kei of 63. Then within that, right, and again, meaning that it's the outer part of Bria descends and becomes the inner part of Yetzirah. And then the Chitzoniot, the outer part of Yetzirah, is the Yud Kei Vav Kei name of Mah, 45, which is the lower inferior level. By the way, Mah and Sag are matched up together. They are more the emanators, the Mashpia, and also more the masculine forms of God, of Yud Kei Vav Kei names of God. All right. So now we're at the lower level. So the Shabbos chart again. So we covered Bria here, and now we're down in Yetzirah. So the inner, so the outer part of Yetzirah, is associated with Yud Kei Vav Kei Gematria 45, and then that outer part of Yetzirah above descends lower into Yetzirah and to Asiya, the inner part of Asiya. Again, and that is the Mah, the 45 of Yud Kei Vav Kei, comes the innermost of Asiya. And then the outer part, that means the lowest level of all the four worlds of Asiya, that is associated with the name Ban, with the name of God, Yud Kei Vav Kei, as Gematria 52, Ban, as we call it. And I think we've discussed this multiple times, and that Mah, and we'll see also related, like we spoke about last week, related to Abraham and Sarah and also Yitzchak and Rivka, that Abraham, the masculine male, is the Mah, and the female is the receiver is the Ban, 52. Okay, the main difference is that the 45, the lowest level, when you spell it Hey, it's Hey Aleph. Okay, To make it 52, you make it the hey, not hey aleph. To make it the higher levels of 63 or 72, you spell out hey as hey yud. Okay? So hey aleph is gematria 6. Hey is gematria 10. Hey yud is gematria 15. So you see how the one letter hey can be changed in different gematrias. So too vav could either be vav aleph vav, which will be gematria 13, or even lower than that, just vav, 2 vavs is 12, or vav yud vav, which will make it 22. Okay? So just to give you an example how that works. Oopsie, let's just get back to what we are learning here. Okay. So the ban, which is the receiving end, is represented on the outer lowest level. And that makes sense because emanate, it's all about, let's say, especially if you're talking about light coming above down. So then that which is being mashpia, that which is emanating, being given out, will be more represented by the masculine gematria form of God of Yud-Kei-Vav-Kei, which is ma or sag, 45 or 63. Whereas the receiving one, which is more associated with feminine, would be the 52. So the lowest level is receiving. It's like Malchut, the sphere of Malchut, which is also feminine, is the lowest of all spheres, yet it contains and carries all of the sphere above and is able to gestate it and be able to birth and thereafter birth all the sphere above her to bring out a whole new form of sphere out for the next levels below. Okay? So similarly is happening here with the names of God that are being activated for all the different levels. And as we will see, and to also to correlate this to what we were speaking earlier of Or Yashar light from up down versus Or Choser light, reflective or returning light, responding light, or reflective or bouncing light back up, that below going up, that the light coming down is Ma, is light of Ma, 45. That's the Or Yashar. Or Choser is Ban, the 52. Okay? These are like very important basic concepts in Kabbalah, which is why even if we've mentioned in the past, I'm just repeating it, because these are essentials to understand the Kabbalah stuff, okay? So this is how it is throughout the week. That is the normal way of how the light shines down above, filtering through each of the worlds, from Atzilut, the inner Atzilus to the outer, then which becomes the inner of Bria below it, then the outer Bria to the inner of Tzitzur below that, and the outer of it to the inner of Yasiyah below that, until it's the outer of Yasiyah. Right? Ava B'Yom Shabbos, that's all Sunday to Friday. Ava B'Yom Shabbos, when it comes to Shabbos itself, then it works differently. It's not, you don't need that Atzilot, the inner part, the more intense part, the more superior part of Atzilut, which is the inner part, like the inner core of Atzilut, doesn't need to first go to the outer realms and then go down lower to Bria, but you could take directly from the inner core of Atzilut and bring it down straight into Bria itself. It skips that step of needing to go through the outer part. So too, the inner of Bria shines, goes straightly into the inner of Yitzhak, or even the outer of Yitzhak. Yes, certainly the inner of Yitzhak. So to the inner of Yitzhak goes straight into the inner of Yitzhak. Because Shabbos is all about the innermost, getting deep, bringing it down. V'hi Noam. So now how is it related now that we're talking about taking Shabbos methodology or dynamics and extending it into the weekdays? So how do we draw that as surplus of Shabbos light into the weekdays? But so now we lose our nose. If we being that on the weekday you have to go through the outer level step between the two worlds inners. So how does it work? How do we take Shabbos where that only goes pnimius to pnimius to pnimius down? How are we going to take it into the weekday if it has to go through Chitzonius? So then you lose out on the weekday. Like the Shabbos, like you don't get it fully. Then you're losing out and getting any of the energy of Shabbos in the weekday. I think kinika chelik maharis Shabbos, or I think here that either memuna either will be like to negate that it's impossibility. Maybe the word is memutza. I'm not sure. I should look it up. Being an intermediary transitional point. The point is that basically we're stuck. How are we going to continue taking intensity of Shabbos from inner to inner to inner in the weekday, where in the weekday you have to go through outer stages, right? So how are we going to do that? So here the answer is that is what the prayer of V'hi Noam is accomplishing. This is what the V'hi Noam is. That hine b'milas V'hi Noam, when we recite, and we say the verse and say the word V'hi, it should be Noam, but graciousness, pleasantness. Chavim have the kavanah lahamshich min atzilut labriya, to draw down from atzilut to bria. That is V'hi Noam. And then we use umilas Hashem Elokeinu aleinu, when you say the next words, that Hashem our Lord upon us, tamshich min abriya yitzira, that's drawing it down from bria to yitzira. Ubamilas umasi yadeinu kanin aleinu, the next clause, and the working handiworks of our handiworks are established or rectified, erected upon us. That is bringing it down from yitzira to asiya. And then the following words, when we say umasi yadeinu kanin, the handiworks, our handiworks is established, as we said earlier. It's not just on us, but it's in us. This is interesting. He doesn't say you go lower than Asiya, because that isn't about. Even we do speak about that there is spiritual Asiya and physical. Our world is physical Asiya, but above our physical world, there's actually the realm of the spiritual template of our physical world and our physical world on a spiritual level. But that's still Asiya. But he's not even going there. He's saying, Umasi Yadenu Kenaneo is doing something even more amazing. It's going back to Bria and drawing it directly down without going through Yitzira. That means once we take from Atzilut, bringing it down to Bria, and then the normal gradation, descent from Atzilut to Bria to Yitzira to Asiya. So now the Asiya is now been prepped up enough that it could take the light of Bria directly without needing to be filtered through Yitzira anymore. So that is Umasi Yadeinu Kainaneu, and we're taking that level of Hashem Elokeinu Aleinu of earlier we said, and we're bringing it down straight into Asiya. So we go back up to Bria and channel down directly back into Asiya. What is the Bria? Because it's true that Shabbos, as we showed in the past, and I'll bring it up again on the chart, Shabbos is, as we've spoken about when we were learning Kigavna more than 2 years ago, is all about elevating the Bria into Atzilus, right? And then even higher to Atik Yemen, Atik Kadisha, Keser, and all that. Fine. But the way it practically manifests is that Shabbos, in the way it affects into our world, is primarily in the our upper, or let's call it the innermost realms of Bria itself. Bria of Shabbos, Bria, the world of Bria itself. Right? We say Kadayel Shabbat, the holy throne of Shabbos, Kusaydi Kare, that we say in Kigavna. I think we learned this in the past, that the holy throne, what's happening is actually, technically, is the Keser, Chachma, and Bina, and Das of Bria itself. That, in other words, the holy throne of Shabbos is already beginning in Bria, but then Friday night, when we daven and do everything in Kiddush, then we're taking it even higher to Tzila. But the way we relate to Shabbos, practically, so to speak, speaking Kabbalah practically, but spiritually practically, so to speak, is mainly manifested in Bria, the world of Bria. Okay? In other words, it's the way that Tzilus is settled into Bria, so that we can relate to it. So that's why the Arizal here continues, or Chaim Vital, Kihine Shabbos hu beBria. For we know that Shabbos is mainly in Bria. We know Shabbos that the king wears the garments of Bria. Or like we said before, that the throne, the Kisei HaKavod, the holy throne that the king of Shabbat, the Hashem sits on, quote unquote, sits on Shabbat, for Shabbos, that is the world of Bria. So too the quote unquote garments that are wrapping around, that the king is wearing for Shabbos. And as we spoken about when we were also more than 2 years ago, when we were learning about the prepping of Shabbos, and that we're supposed to put on new clothing, that's a main part of Shabbos. That Rizal is very into the whole idea of new clothing, specifically white clothing. And even the Shalah brings this down, who was influenced by the Rizal. And this is in addition to going to the mikvah, washing ourselves is also very important. So there is the idea of the garments. So the garments of Shabbos are Bria. You understand what he's saying here. The garment is on our outside, meaning that the king, meaning Hashem himself, state of Shabbos is higher than Bria, is Atzilus. But the way we see, quote unquote, relate to Hashem for Shabbos is through Hashem being clothed with the world of Bria, so to speak. Just like we said before, Yetzirah is included in Bria, whether in the weekdays, that the outer part, that the inner part of Yetzirah, it becomes the outer part of Bria, or even in Shabbos, the inner part of Yetzirah becomes the inner part of Bria. So too, we have to combine not just work that the connection of Asiyah to Bria is through Yetzirah, but it's also, there's a direct connection to it. By the way, there's a way to make links, and this explains the thing of the idea. Yisrael b'araisa kuchabrichu kulachad. That it's a paraphrase, even though it's a debate if the words it's exactly described in this term that Israel and Torah and God are all one. And the analogy in Motzei and other places is like a chain. So a chain, you have different links. Yeah, you have 3 links, 2, 3. So let's say a chain, I suppose anything is more than just 2 links. You need, in other words, 2 whole pieces. You need probably 3. So the question. So let's say we say that we're connected to God like a chain. In other way, shalshelas, right? So if you say that let's say God is on top, then you have Torah and Israel, right? So the question is, what is the middle? What are the lower 2? What is higher? Is Torah higher than Israel? Is Israel higher than Torah? And whatever is at the lowest, it doesn't have direct link to God, right? Because if you have 2, and then if 3, again, there's the upper muscle and then the lower muscle. So just so you know, I'll cut to the chase. According to Kabbalah, according to Chassidus, for sure, Israel is higher than Torah, actually. But Torah itself has direct link, not to God through Israel, but his own independent link to God directly. But how does that work in the linkage of the metal eyes, let's quote from the chain? So the answer is that lowest one loops back as interconnected, just like the Israelites. Where do you see this in the culture of our world? Have you ever seen the 5 rings of the Olympic symbol? It is in such a way that the lower links, it's all interconnected. So the 3 links. So think of it as if there's 3 of the 5 of the Olympic rings. So that means that taking it 3 is like this, and then there's a lower one below it. But that's, in other words, they're all equally connected to each other. So it's more like a segel, like the segel, and where they're all interconnected. So too here, there is the way that the lowest ring, let's call it V'hi, is connected to Bria, but needing to go through the middle ring of Yetzirah. But there's also the way that lowest of V'hi could be linked up directly above it, the Yetzirah, even straight to Bria. Okay? Where we? Okay. And that is the very last part of the verse. Umasi Yadeinu Kainanei was going from Asiyah straight up to Bria. Just like we said, Yetzirah is especially the innermost part of Yitzir is connected to the outer, the outer part of Bria. So too, we need to include a Siyah to be connected directly to Bria in order to receive the light of Bria of Shabbos. That's through the saying and having the kavanah of that last part of the verse. Since it's not possible for the Asiyah to reach Bria right away, and needs to go through Asiyah, therefore first we go the normal way, linking Asiyah to Yitzira through, and then to upper to Bria, that's the Masidenu Kaneu. And then you could do the direct linkage of Asiyah straight up, bypassing Yitzira straight to Bria. And that's through those words. Okay? So that is one way to understand the V'hi Noam. Now he has a couple more ways, and again it gets even more technical, and therefore we're not going to read through it all. I'm just going to peruse and see what there is that we, without all the Kabbalistic formulas, because it's not just the terminology, it's also equations, different complicated ways of gematrias and letter sequencing and so on. So he says here, now we're going to explain the actual words of V'hi Noam. So he says, first thing is you have V'hi, two words, V'hi Noam. The one is to draw the V'hi from Noam. Pirush. Okay, so that Noam is the highest level. Like we said before, it's associated with the highest level of Bina. And also this way it's connected to the form of God's name of Ehyeh, as in the way that the gematria is 161. We're not going to go into the three ways that the gematria of Ehyeh. There's 144, I think, 161, and 100. I forget what the other one is. But basically, so take V'hi. What is the gematria of, or V'hi or Vayehi? So you have 2 years, that's 20. And then you have 6, that's 16. And then you have, 5. So that is 31. Okay. So V'hi is 31, which is also the gematria of God's name, Kale, Aleph Lamed, or right? And so you're taking we're drawing from the most supreme level of in God's state. From there, of Noam, we extend from that the level of Kale, Aleph Lamed, and we bring that down into Bria. Okay. Then he connects it, how we do the two things, bringing down the words Ehyeh and Yud Kei Vav. He's saying that the word in Vayehi, you have Yud Kei Vav, right? You have 3 of the 4 letters of God's name, Yud Kei Vav Kei. That means, so what does it mean, Yud Kei Vav? That means it's still on the highest level. It wasn't fully brought down to the second lowest Hey, which is in our lowest realm, our world. That means it's still on that higher level. And he's saying also borrow the extra Yud from the Yehi that you're not using, make a V'hi Noam, blah, blah, blah. Oh, the third gematria of Ehyeh is 171, I see here it says. Okay. I'm not going to go too much, again, not too much detail. Then with the next words, Hashem Elokeinu Aleinu, that again, as we spoke about earlier, to bring from Bria to Yitzira, in what way? So basically you take the extra word letters of God's name, which are not from the original Yud Kei Vav Kei, but the Vav Dalet of Yud, or the second Hey of Hey, and so on. So in Gematrias, you bring it down. So basically he's explaining in Gematria and formulations of God's names, how, again, the same idea, same before, how we bring it down through the words from Atzilus to Bria to Yitzira Asiyah, blah, blah. So that is, Hashem, Elokeinu, brings it down even lower. And then the word Aleinu, when we say the word Yemenu, he says Aleinu is the world of Yitzira. Okay? So Elokeinu, our God, is probably Bria. Because we know Elokim is already the level of related to our worlds. In other contexts, Elohim is right. Is the attribute of din, of judgment of God, or in other words, the way God becomes more limited, formulated for our world. And then even below that is the aleinu upon us, Yitzira. Why? It makes sense. But if we are in the world of Asiya, what is right above us is Yitzira. So that's the aleinu, that which is above us. So we're bringing down God's name now into Yitzira aleinu. Then we continue the next part of the verse, that Ma'aseh Yedenu Kainenu aleinu, is to bring it from Yitzira to Asiya. And then he goes again to complicated gematrias of the word of Motzei and Atbashet Kel, blah, 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 blah. We'll leave it to all the great Kabbalists, but just, it's happening. Just know it's happening. So that's the word Umase, is bringing in some comment. Yadenu, the word of our hands, is that we're bringing down the level of Mochin, meaning Chacham bin Adas, into Asiya, into the name of Aleph Dal Nun Yud, Adonai. Right? Because we know Yud Kei Vav Kei is the upper worlds, and is or especially Chachma and so on. Malchut is mainly the name Adonai, right? But even in Asiya, the highest levels, the mind, the brain, so to speak, of it is still the way we're drawing down from the higher, the essence of God, name of God, Yud Kei, the Yud Kei of God's name, filtering down. And he says that, in fact, if you take the letters Yud Kei and Adonai together is gematria 80, which is the same exact gematria of the word Yadenu, is also 80. Okay, so now we've gone from Kale to now in the realm of Asiya is bringing Yud Kei and Adonai together. Now the next word, Kainena. Kainena is bringing, channeling, just like we said before, that there's a way to channel straight from Bria, bypassing Yitzir to Asiya. So too, there's a way of channeling straight from Keser all the way, bypassing all the spirit coming or realms coming straight down to Asiya, which in fact, that is a great unique quality of Malchus, that even though Malchus is the lowest of all Sirah. So inferior. It needs to go through the upper ninth sphere till it gets at all is what it does, which is true. In a direct innermost channeling way, it goes that way. But it is also known that Malchut, in its spherical way, could, in its own way, bypass all the spherot around and tap directly to the Keser that's on the highest realm. That's why, in fact, the Malchut of the lowest realm can become Keser. And in fact, the Yitin Lucha Keser Melucha, we say, that the Keser Malchus, the crown of royalty, that Keser and Malchus had their own direct linkage, bypassing again all the other spirit in between. So that is Kainenu is establishing that. And he says, in fact, we spell it Aleph, Aleph, Dal, Aleph, Nun, Aleph, Dal, Nun, Yud. That's Gemati, the word Konein, to be fortified, structured, or established, as we said. Also, the word Kainena is like the word Konein, established with the Hey. Right? Remember, before we said in the upper worlds, the word V'hi only has Yud, Kei, and Vav. That has only one Hey. Where's the second Hey? So the second and final Hey that brings it manifested directly, which symbolizes our lowest world in Asiya, that's the Hey from the last letter of the word Kainena. That's the Hey Tata. And then he goes on to other complicated gematrias and Rashi Tevas. We're not going to go into that. Next word, Aleinu. Again, is another way of also channeling in its own way gematria of Eket. We're not going to go into that. And then the final part of the verse, Umasi Yedenu Kainenu, is that now we'll read a little bit here. That now until Umasi Yedenu Kainenu, we said we already brought it down to Asiya, right? But ha'amnan lefish Asiya b'techa klipas. Like the word Asiya is the one that's most related, which is part of our physical world, the place where there's all the negative forces, the klipot. L'chein tzarich tikun acher yesa elyon. Therefore, in order to deal with the reality of having all these intense obstacles and even impure forces that down in our world of Asiya, then we need higher powers to combat it and to deal with it. So therefore, we need this. So therefore, again, Ma'aseh Yedenu Kainenu is not a repetition of what we said before, but it's saying that that Ma'aseh Yedenu Kainenu is to draw to that highest level That is to draw from Bria itself and down to Asiya, and also to elevate from Asiya up to Bria, which is where all the post for Shabbos, surplus of Shabbos energy is hanging out in. To have any surplus and to be able to work with it in extending Shabbos into the weekdays. Again, we're going to skip all the Kabbalistic jargon. Okay. Okay, so that's Koneneu, which is in the Koneneu, and the way he reads it here is Koneneu is right before we had the word Konenach. That's Konen plus Hey. Koneneu is Konen plus Hey Vav. We have an extra Vav. Let me see. So that's the Hey that we're drawing even more. It's not just the lower Hey, but even the Vav that channels from with the Yetzirah energy, which is symbolized by the Vav. But and it's also Hey Al Vav. That means we're elevating the Hey of our lowest realm of Asiya, bringing it up to a level of Vav. So when we're working through all these hamshachot, all these extensions, drawing down by saying this verse of V'hi Noam, may we hope that this will leave an impression of this great, highest holy level of the surplus Shabbos holiness into bringing it into the weekdays, as we spoke about in past in detail. And then he goes on further Kabbalistically. We see, you mentioned, there's the word Elokeinu, Aleinu, Yadeinu, again Aleinu and Yadeinu. The 5 times the word nu, which is 56, 5 times 56 is Mansapach. We're not going to go into it. Those are the letters of the Hebrew alphabet that you have a special unique shape for it when it's at the end of a word. Like the Mem, Sofit, Nun, and Sofit, and on, which these correspond with the 5 negative forces of our world of Asiya. So that is the nu. And also nu is possessive, ours, to us. That means making it more intimate, more within our real human experience here in this world. And through that, we have the kavana to sweeten through the light that we bring down from the bina, which is again the word noam itself, and we're able to sweeten. And in fact, he says he discussed this idea of this new us, ours, in the 56th Gematria of V'hi when he discussed about the word Elkeinu Ke'avasenu in Hashem. Okay. Now he goes that also he has another kavana for this. Aaron in the chat gave us Reb Zalman's translation of V'hi Noam, which reads the following: "May your kindly presence," that's how he translates. Okay, it's not even there. V'hi Noam Hashem Elokeinu, your kindly presence, Lord, ever be pleasant for us. So that's the Noam. May our hands' efforts achieve their aim. That's a Ma'asidenu Koneneu, Konenu Aleinu. Please let our efforts result in good. That's Ma'asidenu Koneneu. And this is in typical Reb Zalman way, where he very freely translates. Okay. Next, Aaron adds about the word Motzei. He has some comments about Elohim, right? In creation, right? The Motzei above, Motzei below. Thank you. And in fact, we speak in Kabbalah, there's Asiya de La'ela, Asiya de L'Sata. There's the realm or dimension of the world of action above, the world of action below. So it mirrors the similar idea. Yeah, and you do connect Maisa, I see later, Aaron, with the idea of poesis. Poesis, which is actually the word in the Greek, if you see in Aristotle's Poetics, he speaks about this too. Poesis means working. So artists, actually, poets weren't just people in the strict Greek Hellenic definition of poesis, that a poet is not just someone who writes words that are beautiful as art, but any craft of art, creation, even with your hands, painting, even a piece of music, all that would fall under the category of poesis, according to the ancient classics. Yes, that if you remember the whole metaphor of God creating the world, we said it's like an artist creating an artifact, or the architect, and that is in fact direct metaphor that the Alter Rebbe and Mifta Rebbe and Chabad use for the whole process of how we are creators and artists, so to speak. Artifice, that's what you say in the next one, art, craft. Thank you very much. So, great. So now let's look at some more angles of these Kabbalist Kavanas related to the verse V'hi Noam. And here he's going to plug it in to three types of tosfot of surplus, addition of the holiness of Shabbos. One is that which is happening by itself alone. And this we spoke about a while ago at the beginning of Shabbos, that there's the ontological effect that Shabbos has on our human and all of existence, whether we're aware even in that Shabbos, so even if we don't have the right kavanas, there is the elevation of the worlds happening. Yetzirah, Yassi is ascending to Yetzirah and Yetzirah to Bria and all that. If it's happening by itself, at least, so why are we davening? Why are we making the meals? So the Arizal explains in the beginning, when he discusses the beginning of Shabbos stuff, that is in order to make it in the pnimius, that embodying in the pnimius, into an innermost. It shouldn't just be the outerness, because without it, just the outer world of a sea is going to go not even to the inner. Not only that, the outer world is just going to go to the outer of Yetzirah, and so on and so forth. But in order to make it go internally, for that we need to give our own input. Again, through prayer on the spiritual level and through the meals and food that we eat in Shabbos on the physical level. Okay? So too, there's an ontological effect on all the worlds of the holiness of Shabbos, whether we give our own input into it or not. All the worlds are elevating, and so too the Tosfos Shabbos, all the worlds are being effectuated by the holiness of Shabbos coming to them. And that corresponds with the first part of the verse. V'hi Noam Hashem Elokeinu l'olam. Then comes the second aspect of the surplus of holiness of Shabbos as manifested with us. Ukneged mashatiged adam terviach hayidei ma'isa ben simei chol k'dei lahamshach chol tesis kedusha Shabbos ve'erev Shabbos. So in order to through what we work throughout the weekday and gain, add through doing working in the weekdays in the physical world and elevating it to a state of holiness. And so this is in order to draw and make ourselves prepared and to bring down even more and greater level of Teisvus Kedusha Shabbos, that surplus of holiness Shabbos. In order to do that, and we say that and from this too there should be some holiness. The way that we, on our personal way, are bringing holiness into the physical world and even higher. And that is the second clause of the pasuk. Then comes the third part. And then corresponding to that which we work throughout in the middle of the week through it, and that means that even if we messed up and we sinned, okay, so it's if we just do regular neutral work, that's easy to elevate. But if we made mistakes and sins, that's even more difficult to elevate and transform. Because then you need to put in the real work and the tshuva and all that. So we're saying even that harder work that we do in order to and be able to purify it and elevate it for the Shabbos to the Shabbos level, for corresponding to that on the mispalim we pray it should come to us for the upcoming Shabbos, and that's the last clause of the pasuk Masi Yadenu Kainanehu. Okay, it's saying and that even that which we messed up through sin and blemished through sin, that itself should be elevated and made holy. The Zel Kainanehu, to him, it's saying to it in itself, not a holiness that is descending or imposing upon us, but even from within our limitation, even our darkness, even our impurity, that itself can be transformed and made holy. We're just going to go to the outer of the outer of Yetzirah, and so on and so forth. But in order to make it go internally, for that we need to give our own input. Again, through prayer on the spiritual level and through the meals and food that we eat on Shabbos on the physical level. Okay? So too, there's an ontological effect on all the worlds of the holiness of Shabbos, whether we give our own input into it or not. All the worlds are elevating, and so too the test of Shabbos, all the worlds are being effectuated by the holiness of Shabbos coming to them. And that corresponds with the first part of the verse. V'hi Noam. Then comes the second aspect of the surplus of holiness of Shabbos as manifested with us. So in order to, through what we work throughout the weekday and gain, add through during working in the weekdays in the physical world and elevating it to a state of holiness. And so this is in order to draw and make ourselves prepared and to bring down even more and greater level of Taisvitz Kedusha Shabbos, that surplus of holiness Shabbos. In order to do that, and we say that from this too there should be some holiness. The way that we, on our personal way, are bringing holiness into the physical world and even higher. And that is the second clause of the pasuk. Then comes the third part. That and then corresponding to that which we work throughout in the middle of the week through it, that means that even if we messed up and we sinned, okay, so it's if we just do regular neutral work, that's easy to elevate. But if we made mistakes and sins, that's even more difficult to elevate and transform. Because then you need to put in the real work and the tshuva and all that. So we're saying even that harder work that we do in order to and be able to purify it and elevate it for the Shabbos, to the Shabbos level, for corresponding to that, on the mispalim we pray it should come to us for the upcoming Shabbos, and that's the last clause of the pasuk Masi Yadenu Kainanehu. Okay, it's saying and that even that which we messed up through sin and blemished through sin, that itself should be elevated and made holy. The Zel Kainanehu, to him, it's saying to it in itself, not a holiness that is descending or imposing upon us, but even from within our limitation, even our darkness, even our impurity, that itself can be transformed and made holy, bouncing it back up. But again, we're not using, when it comes during the weekday, we're not taking the let's say the energy of Sunday itself or Monday itself, Tuesday itself, but we're still drawing from before that, from the Shabbos energy. That means we're still dependent of that which has to come upon us from above. And that is why we say, Mas Yadenu Kaninu Aleinu, which is taking the Shabbos energy, more specifically the higher level of pairing, the highest level that should be made, and then we activate an Ur going back up. And now he's adding a little bit more. We didn't discuss now. That once we accomplish this, then we could say, as we know, Motzei Shabbat, after we say V'hi Noam and Yeshu B'Seitzer, we go on to say Uval Tzion Gayil prayer, right? Which we don't do during the week. We don't put the V'hi Noam and Yeshu B'Seitzer directly linked to Uval Tzion. Actually follows Ashrei or Yadcha Hashem, right? But not Uval Tzion. Okay, why? And again, this is also because we're able to manifest the highest level, bringing it straight into the world. And then also again, he repeats that corresponds on the physical level, on the food level, with the Suda of Malav Malka, the fourth meal of Shabbos. Remember, we also, incidentally, not to repeat it too much in detail, but remember we said it's not called its own special meal, the first meal of the weekday, but it's called the fourth meal of Shabbos, meaning, and that in itself is telling us that Malava Malka is not just about the weekday, but it's actually about extending the Shabbos energy itself. Okay. Hence, like, Hinen inspire Lamaila. Now, we're going to read this in. This is the last paragraph, and then we'll go on to other things. So based on this, what we explained before, and the Inyan of V'hi Noam ki kavanasayinu hi lahamshach teitz Shabbos l'meyachel habayim, to bring the kavan is to bring down the taste of surplus Shabbos into weekdays. The Orach Chayzer Bina, which is Noam, is ki the Shabbos. I think it's supposed to ki Abina he Shabbos. Bina is Shabbos because Shabbos, the karasa l'Shabbos einig, is that to bring out the manifesting of the oneg of Shabbos, which is above them all, channels through the openness of Bina. We also explained that to extend this surplus of Shabbos is on the three levels of the soul, nefesh, ruach, neshama. This paragraph is just like an encapsulation of what we just learned. That the neshama is till Sunday, ruach till Monday, nefesh till Tuesday. Then the other 3 days, that means Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, is to prep the again, in ascending order, nefesh, ruach, neshama, for the upcoming week. Now he's going to say something that I said outside, but now we're going to say it inside. That we say in Sifri, it's the Midrash of the Mishnah times. Shabbos, that we say, right? We say the pasuk Zachar Yom Shabbos Akacha. Remember the day of Shabbos to make it sanctified. So we commonly means to remember the day of Shabbos. Say on Shabbos to remind yourself. But it doesn't make sense. If you're in Shabbos, so you don't need a reminder, you're in it. A memory means something that's distant from you, and you need a reminder, a recall. So therefore, the Sifri says that when we say Zachar Yom Shabbos Akacha, it's not talking about Shabbos itself, but it means that the other days of the week, that every day of the week, you're supposed to remind yourself about Shabbos. In fact, there's this mitzvah of 6 things you're supposed to remember every day. It's called the Sheish Zechiris, and one of them is Shabbos. There are people that say the pasuk Zachar Yom Shabbos Akacha every day of the week because of this, right? So that mitzvah he limnois by Yimei Shabbos, and moreover, the Sifri says the mitzvah to count the days a week on Shabbos. Leimer Aleph b'Shabbos, Beis b'Shabbos. You don't just say today's Sunday. You say the first day of the week that's leading to the Shabbos, Monday towards Shabbos. As we mentioned before, the Shir Shayim, we say Yom Rishon Shabbos, Yom Shei Shabbos, and so on. Like Chaim Kastav Ramban, so to the Nachmanides Ramban's mentioned. By Inyan Hu, Lahira is to indicate that all the 6 days of the week are dependent, connected, and extend from Shabbos. And that their energy and light of all the 6 days of the week is coming from the Shabbos before. The Rechaim Vital is telling us, remember this very well. Because in fact, according to the Rizal, this is part of the mitzvahs, 613 mitzvahs. And one of the 248 positive mitzvahs is limnois. To coin, not to say Sunday, but say first day of the week to Shabbos and so on and so forth. Okay? So there we are. We covered everything you wanted to know about V'hi Noam and why it's so important to say it and saying it standing, and how this is, at fact, how the V'hi Noam is the portal through which we channel the surplus energy and holiness of Shabbos on the spiritual realm, certainly into all the days of the subsequent week. So, and on the spiritual realm, and he mentions parenthetically, which we know we've learned other places too, that the way we do it on the physical realm is through the Milava Malka meal of Motzei Shabbos that we see. Okay, Ad Kan.